The salvage beacon screamed through space like a dying star, its distress signal cutting through the void with mechanical precision. Captain Marcus Chen adjusted his ship's trajectory, the small human vessel responding to his touch like a faithful companion. 3 months of deep space salvage work had yielded nothing but scrap metal and broken dreams, but this signal felt different. It pulsed with an urgency that made his combat-trained instincts twitch. Marcus had served in the Terran Defense Corps for 15 years before turning to salvage work. The transition from soldier to scavenger wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept him among the stars where he belonged. His ship, the Iron Will, was a modified military corvette stripped of most weapons but reinforced for the dangers of deep space salvage. The AI navigation system chirped softly as they approached the source of the beacon. What emerged from the cosmic darkness defied expectation. The vessel before him stretched nearly 2 kilometers in length, its hull a twisted amalgamation of metals that seemed to shift and flow like liquid mercury. No human shipyard had ever produced anything remotely similar. The design spoke of alien engineering, but not any species Marcus recognized from the galactic databases. Strange symbols covered the hull in flowing script that seemed to glow with inner light. The beacon originated from a small human escape pod, attached to the alien ship's hull like a metallic parasite. Marcus's scanner revealed a single life sign inside the pod, weak but stable. Someone had survived whatever catastrophe had befallen this mysterious vessel. The escape pod's black box transmitted a brief message in standard Terran military code. "This is Lieutenant Sarah Knox, Terran Survey Corps. I have discovered something extraordinary aboard this alien vessel. The ship contains prisoners, all female, from dozens of different species. They appear to be held in some form of stasis. The ship's automated systems are failing, and I estimate the life support will fail within 72 hours. I am transmitting detailed scans and requesting immediate assistance. Warning, the ship's defense systems are still partially active." Marcus felt his blood run cold. Prisoners meant slavers, and slavers meant trouble on a scale that could spark interstellar incidents. But the thought of dozens of beings dying in the cold vacuum of space because he chose the safe path made his stomach turn. Every instinct screamed at him to call for backup, to contact the nearest Terran outpost and let proper authorities handle the situation. But the nearest outpost was 3 weeks away at best, and those prisoners didn't have 3 weeks. He docked with the escape pod first, following standard salvage protocols. Lieutenant Knox was unconscious but alive, her body showing signs of prolonged exposure to alien atmosphere. Her uniform bore the insignia of the Survey Corps' Deep Exploration Division, the kind of people who went looking for trouble in the darkest corners of space. Marcus transferred her to his medical bay, where his automated systems began treating her for atmospheric poisoning and exhaustion. While Knox recovered, Marcus studied her sensor data. The alien ship was a prison transport, its cargo holds converted into hundreds of individual cells. The scans revealed a staggering variety of life forms, all female, all held in various forms of suspended animation. Some species he recognized from galactic databases, others were completely unknown. The ship's power core was failing, its exotic energy signature unlike anything in human technology. Knox regained consciousness as Marcus finished reviewing her data. Her eyes held the haunted look of someone who had seen too much, survived too much. She spoke in a voice roughened by alien atmosphere and desperation. "Captain, thank God someone responded to the beacon. That ship, it's a nightmare. The species that built it, they're called the hegemony. They're slavers, but not like anything we've encountered before. They specifically target females of various species for reasons I couldn't determine. The prisoners include Altarian nobles, Centauri scientists, even some species I've never seen before." Marcus helped her sit up, noting the determination that burned behind her exhaustion. "How did you end up aboard that ship, Lieutenant?" "My survey team was investigating unusual energy readings in this sector when we were captured. The hegemony ship appeared out of nowhere, some kind of advanced stealth technology. They killed the men immediately but took me aboard. I think they were studying me, learning about human physiology. I managed to escape during a system malfunction, but I couldn't free the others. The security systems are beyond anything I could crack." Knox pulled up a holographic display showing the ship's internal structure. "The prison sections are here, here, and here. Each cell has individual life support, but the main power core is failing. When it goes, those systems will shut down one by one. The prisoners will die slowly, Captain. We can't let that happen." Marcus studied the schematics, his military training automatically cataloging defensive positions and potential threats. The ship was designed like a fortress with multiple security checkpoints and automated defense systems. A frontal assault would be suicide, but Knox had identified potential weak points in the ship's structure. The hegemony crew abandoned ship when the power core started failing, Knox continued. They took their primary vessels and left this transport to die. But their automated systems are still active and they're designed to prevent exactly what we're trying to do. The ship won't just let us walk in and free the prisoners. Marcus made his decision with the cold calculation of a veteran soldier. Then we don't ask permission. You know the ship's layout, I know combat tactics. Between us, we might be able to pull this off. Knox's eyes widened.
Captain, you don't understand.
This isn't just a rescue mission. If we succeed, if we free those prisoners, we'll be making enemies of the hegemony. They're not just slavers, they're an empire. They have technology that makes our best ships look like toys. Marcus was already moving toward his weapon locker, checking power cells and ammunition counts. Lieutenant, I've been a soldier longer than I've been a salvager. I know what it means to make enemies. But I also know what it means to leave people behind. We're going in. The preparation took 2 hours. Marcus donned his old military combat suit, its systems still responding to his biometric signature after years of storage. Knox armed herself with weapons from his emergency cache, her Survey Corps training evident in how she handled each piece of equipment. Together they reviewed the ship's layout one final time, planning their route through the alien corridors toward the prison sections. As they prepared to board the mysterious vessel, Marcus felt the familiar calm that preceded combat. Somewhere ahead lay dozens of innocent beings depending on 2 humans they had never met. The odds were impossible, the enemy unknown, but that had never stopped humanity before. The airlock cycled open with a hiss that seemed to echo through the empty corridors of the alien vessel. Marcus stepped through first, his weapon raised and sensors scanning for threats. The atmosphere was breathable but carried an odd metallic taste that made his skin crawl. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows along walls covered in the same flowing script they had seen on the hull. Knox followed close behind, her scanner painting a 3-dimensional map of their surroundings. The ship's interior defied human architectural logic. Corridors curved in impossible directions, and doorways were shaped for beings taller and broader than humans. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth standard, giving their movements an unsettling floating quality. The prison sections are 3 levels down, Knox whispered, her voice barely audible through their comm system. But we'll have to pass through what the ship's database calls the Guardian Chamber. I couldn't translate exactly what that means, but the energy reading suggested some kind of automated defense system. They moved through the ship like ghosts, their footsteps muffled by the strange material that covered the floors. Marcus had infiltrated enemy installations before, but this felt different. The ship seemed alive somehow, its walls humming with alien energy that made his teeth ache. Periodically, lights would flicker in sequence along the walls, as if the ship was thinking. The first security checkpoint appeared exactly where Knox's scans had predicted. A massive circular chamber stretched before them, its walls lined with devices that pulsed with malevolent energy. In the center of the room stood a pillar of crystal that reached from floor to ceiling, its surface swirling with captured lightning. Motion sensors, Knox breathed, pointing to nearly invisible threads of light that crisscrossed the chamber. And those devices on the walls, they're some kind of energy weapons. The moment we enter that room will be target practice. Marcus studied the chamber with the calculating gaze of a predator. His military training had taught him that every defense system had weaknesses, blind spots that clever attackers could exploit. The alien engineers who designed this ship thought like fortress builders, creating overlapping fields of fire that would stop conventional assault. But they hadn't planned for human creativity. The crystal in the center, Marcus observed. It's the power source for the whole system. If we could disrupt it somehow, the defensive grid would collapse. Knox shook her head. I thought of that. The crystal is protected by its own energy field. My scans couldn't even penetrate it fully. We'd need some kind of specialized equipment to even get close. Marcus smiled grimly. Or we could use the ship's own systems against it. He pointed to a ventilation grate near the ceiling. Those air circulation systems have to connect to the ship's main environmental controls. If we could cause an atmospheric imbalance in that chamber, an emergency protocol might shut down the defensive systems temporarily. It took them 30 minutes to reach the environmental control junction Knox had identified in her original scans. The alien interface was a nightmare of shifting symbols and incomprehensible readouts, but Knox's Survey Corps training had included basic xenotechnology interpretation. Her fingers danced over crystalline controls that responded to touch with musical tones. "I think I can trigger an atmospheric purge in the Guardian chamber," she said, sweat beading on her forehead despite the ship's cool temperature. "The system will flood the room with inert gas to prevent fires or contamination. The defensive grid should shut down automatically to prevent damage to the ship's own systems." Marcus nodded. "How long will we have?" "Maybe 5 minutes before the system realizes there's no actual emergency and resets itself." They returned to the Guardian chamber as quickly as the ship's twisted layout allowed. Marcus positioned himself at the entrance, ready to sprint across the chamber the moment the defenses went down. Knox's voice crackled through his comm system as she initiated the atmospheric purge from her position at the environmental controls. The change was immediate and dramatic. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the ship as inert gas flooded the chamber. The energy weapons on the walls powered down in sequence, their threatening hum fading to silence. The crystal pillars' swirling energy slowed to a barely perceptible crawl. Marcus ran. His combat suit's life support sealed automatically as he entered the gas-filled chamber, his legs pumping in the reduced gravity. The distance across the chamber felt infinite, every second stretching like hours. Behind him, he could hear the ship's computer systems chattering in alien languages as they tried to diagnose the supposed emergency. He reached the far exit just as the defensive systems began to reactivate. Energy crackled through the chamber once more, but Marcus was already through the doorway and cycling the emergency seal. Knox joined him moments later, having taken a parallel route through the ship's maintenance tunnels. 2 minutes to spare, she gasped, checking her chronometer. The next checkpoint is the prison-level access. According to my scans, it's protected by something the ship's computer calls a selector protocol. I have no idea what that means. They descended through the ship's levels using what appeared to be a cargo lift designed for beings twice their size. The prison level was a revelation of alien cruelty. Hundreds of cells lined endless corridors, each one containing a different species in various forms of suspended animation. Marcus had seen alien life forms before, but never such diversity in one place. The prisoners were all female, as Knox had reported, but the variety was staggering. Some were humanoid with skin that shifted through the color spectrum. Others were more exotic with crystalline growths that might have been hair or some form of natural armor. A few seemed to be energy beings, their forms barely contained by the stasis fields that held them. "Look at them," Knox whispered, her voice filled with awe and horror. "Some of these species aren't in any galactic database. The hegemony has been collecting specimens from across the galaxy, maybe for generations." The selector protocol manifested as a massive door blocking access to the main prison complex. Unlike the other security systems they had encountered, this one seemed designed for interaction rather than destruction. A series of alien symbols glowed on its surface, waiting for some form of input. Knox approached the door carefully, her scanner revealing complex energy patterns beneath its surface. "It's some kind of puzzle or test. The ship's computer is trying to determine if we're authorized to access the prisoners. But I don't understand the criteria it's using." Marcus studied the symbols, looking for patterns his military-trained mind might recognize. "Try showing it your Survey Corps credentials. Maybe it's looking for some kind of authority figure." Knox transmitted her identification through her scanner's interface. The door's symbols shifted and pulsed but remained sealed. The ship's computer responded with what sounded like a negative tone. "It rejected my credentials," Knox said. "Let me try a different approach." She began inputting various combinations of signals, drawing on her xenotechnology training to interpret the door's responses. After several failed attempts, Marcus had an idea that seemed insane even by human standards. "What if it's not looking for credentials?" he suggested. "What if it's testing for something else? The hegemony specializes in capturing females of various species. Maybe the selector protocol is designed to identify potential prisoners rather than authorized personnel." Knox stared at him. "That's either brilliant or completely insane. In my experience, those are often the same thing when dealing with alien technology." Knox reprogrammed her scanner to broadcast a signal identifying her as an unregistered female specimen. The door's response was immediate and shocking. The symbols flashed in rapid sequence before the massive portal began to slide open, revealing the prison complex beyond. "The ship thinks we're bringing it a new prisoner," Knox realized. The selector protocol was designed to keep prisoners in, not to keep rescuers out. It never occurred to the hegemony that someone might try to break into a prison ship. They stepped through the doorway into a vast chamber filled with hundreds of stasis pods. Each pod contained a different being, all suspended in fields of energy that maintained their life functions while keeping them unconscious. Control panels beside each pod displayed alien text that Knox's scanner slowly began to translate. The magnitude of what they faced hit them both simultaneously. Freeing even a fraction of these prisoners would require hours they didn't have, and many of the species had specific atmospheric and environmental requirements that the failing ship could no longer maintain. But as Marcus looked at the faces of the sleeping prisoners, he knew they had to try. The prison complex stretched before them like a cathedral of suffering. Hundreds of stasis pods lined the walls in perfect geometric patterns, each one humming with the energy required to maintain its sleeping occupant. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the hegemony's operation. This was just one ship, and it contained more enslaved beings than most people would see in a lifetime. Knox was already at work with her scanner, trying to decode the alien control systems. The stasis process appears to be standardized across species, she reported. Each pod has individual life support, but they're all connected to the ship's main power grid. When that fails, they'll all shut down simultaneously. Marcus examined the nearest pod, which contained a being that looked almost human, except for the silver patterns that traced across her blue-tinted skin. Her eyes moved beneath closed lids, suggesting that whatever dreams the stasis field allowed were active. The control panel beside her pod displayed symbols that shifted and changed as Knox's universal translator worked to decode them. Her name is Lyra, Knox read from the translated display. Species designation Altarian Noble Class. She was captured during what the system calls a cultural acquisition mission 6 months ago. The pod is maintaining her in perfect physical condition, but there are psychological monitoring systems as well. They're studying her mind even while she sleeps. The horror of the situation deepened as they moved from pod to pod. Each prisoner had a story recorded in the ship's clinical database. Scientists taken from research stations, artists captured during cultural exchanges, even what appeared to be political leaders kidnapped during diplomatic missions. The hegemony wasn't just taking random prisoners. They were systematically collecting the best and brightest females from dozens of different civilizations. Marcus, Knox called from across the chamber. You need to see this. She stood before a pod containing a being unlike anything in the galactic databases. The prisoner appeared to be made of living crystal, her translucent form refracting the pod's energy field into rainbow patterns. But what had caught Knox's attention was the pod's status display, which was flashing warnings in urgent red symbols. Her life support is failing, Knox translated. The stasis field is designed for carbon-based life forms, but she's silicon-based. The system is trying to adapt, but it's slowly poisoning her. She has maybe an hour before the damage becomes irreversible. Marcus made a decision that would have terrified any reasonable person. Then we start with her. Figure out how to wake her up. Knox's hands flew over the control panel. Her Survey Corps training stretched to its limits as she navigated alien medical protocols. The awakening process is incredibly complex. It's not just about turning off the stasis field. The system has to gradually restore normal biological functions while preventing shock to the subject's system. For a silicon-based life form, I'm not even sure what normal means. The ship's computer seemed to sense their activities. New alarms began sounding throughout the complex, and Marcus noticed security cameras swiveling to track their movements. The ship's automated systems were learning, adapting to their presence in ways that suggested an artificial intelligence far more sophisticated than anything humans had developed. The ship knows we're here, Marcus observed. It's probably been watching us since we boarded. The question is, what's it going to do about it? Knox was too focused on the crystal being's pod to respond immediately. She had managed to access the medical protocols, but the alien interface was fighting her every step of the way. The system keeps asking for authorization codes I don't have. It wants to verify that I'm qualified to perform the awakening procedure. Marcus studied the security cameras that tracked them. What if we're approaching this wrong? We've been trying to hack the ship's systems, but maybe we should be trying to convince them instead. Knox looked up from the control panel. Convince them of what? The ship's primary function is to preserve valuable specimens for the hegemony. But the hegemony abandoned this ship when the power core started failing. From the ship's perspective, we might be the only hope these prisoners have for survival. It was a desperate gambit, but Marcus began speaking directly to the nearest security camera. He explained their situation in simple terms, hoping the ship's translation systems could understand human speech. He told the artificial intelligence about the failing power core, about the hegemony's abandonment, and about their intention to evacuate the prisoners to safety. The response was immediate and unexpected. The alarm stopped sounding, and the control panel beneath Knox's hand suddenly became cooperative. New displays appeared, showing detailed medical information about each prisoner and step-by-step awakening procedures. It worked, Knox breathed. The ship's AI has reclassified us as emergency medical personnel. It's giving us full access to the prison systems. They began with the crystal being, following the ship's guidance through an awakening process that took nearly 20 minutes. The stasis field gradually faded, and the prisoner's crystalline form began to resonate with musical tones. Her eyes opened, revealing depths like star-filled galaxies. She spoke in a voice like wind chimes, and the ship's translator rendered her words into standard Terran. "Who are you? Are you more hegemony experimenters?" Marcus stepped forward, his hands raised peacefully. "My name is Marcus Chen. I'm human. We're here to rescue you and the other prisoners." The crystal being, who identified herself as Resonance of the Deep Caverns, sat up slowly in her pod. Her form was beautiful and alien, refracting light in patterns that seemed to tell stories. "Humans, I have heard of your species. You are the warriors who fought the Shadow Fleet to a standstill, are you not?" Knox looked surprised. "You know about the Shadow Fleet War?" Resonance made a sound like crystal bells laughing. "News travels through the quantum depths, human female. Your species has quite a reputation among those who value freedom. The hegemony fears you greatly." As they helped Resonance from her pod, she explained what she knew about the hegemony's operations. Her people, the Crystalline Collective, had been targeted because of their ability to perceive quantum fluctuations. The hegemony was using captured females to develop new technologies, combining the unique abilities of different species to create weapons and tools beyond anything they could develop alone. "They take only females because we adapt more readily to foreign environments," Resonance continued. "Male psychology is more rigid in most species. Females are more likely to survive the integration process they use to combine different biological and technological systems." The revelation added urgency to their mission. This wasn't just slavery. It was systematic biological exploitation on a galactic scale. Marcus began planning their next moves while Knox prepared to awaken more prisoners. But Resonance had additional information that changed everything. "The ship you call the Iron Will," she said, her crystalline form shimmering with concern. "It is being tracked by hegemony forces. They did not abandon this vessel willingly. They were forced to flee by approaching danger, but they have left automated surveillance systems throughout this sector. Your rescue attempt has been detected." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "How long do we have?" Resonance's form flickered as she accessed quantum information flows beyond human comprehension. "A hegemony battle group will arrive in approximately 6 hours. 3 ships, each carrying enough firepower to reduce your vessel to component atoms." Knox paused in her preparation of the next awakening procedure. "We can't evacuate hundreds of prisoners in 6 hours. Not with just one ship." But Resonance was smiling, her crystalline features arranging themselves into an expression of hope. "You do not understand the significance of what you have done, humans. You are the first species to attempt a rescue mission against the hegemony. Word of your actions is already spreading through quantum communication networks across the galaxy. Help is coming." Marcus wanted to believe her, but his military training demanded concrete solutions rather than hope. "What kind of help?" "Every species that has lost daughters to the hegemony. Every civilization that has been weakened by their predations. The humans have shown that the hegemony can be defied, and others will follow your example." As if summoned by her words, the ship's sensors detected new contacts approaching through hyperspace. Not hegemony vessels, but ships of a dozen different designs, all converging on their location. The rescue mission had become something larger, a symbol of resistance that was drawing supporters from across the galaxy. But 6 hours was still 6 hours, and they had work to do. With Resonance's help, the awakening process became far more efficient. Her crystalline biology allowed her to interface directly with the ship's quantum systems, providing translation services that went beyond mere language. She could interpret the emotional and biological needs of each species, helping Nox adjust the awakening protocols for optimal results. The second prisoner they revived was an Altarian named Lyra, the blue-skinned woman Marcus had first examined. She emerged from stasis with the graceful movements of someone trained in combat, her silver markings glowing brightly as her body readjusted to consciousness. Her first words were a challenge. "If this is another hegemony experiment, I will die fighting rather than submit." Marcus held up his hands peacefully. "Lady Lyra, we're here to rescue you. My name is Marcus Chen and I'm human." Lyra's expression shifted from hostility to amazement. "Human? The species that turned back the Void Hunters at Kepler Station?" She studied Marcus with eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. "The hegemony spoke of humans in their interrogations. They called you the stubborn species and claimed your military tactics were unpredictable to the point of madness." Nox continued working on the next pod while listening to the conversation. "How many of you knew about humanity before being captured?" Lyra moved to help with the awakening procedures, her noble training apparently including medical knowledge. "Most advanced species have heard stories. Humans have a reputation for doing impossible things when cornered. The Battle of Thermopylae Station is taught in military academies across 3 sectors. The third prisoner was unlike anything they had encountered. She appeared to be composed of flowing liquid metal, her form constantly shifting between different configurations. When she spoke, her voice resonated with harmonic frequencies that made the air itself vibrate. "I am confluence of the silver streams," she said, her form stabilizing into something roughly humanoid. "I represent the Mechanarch Collective. We had thought rescue impossible until quantum whispers brought news of human stubbornness." As more prisoners awakened, a pattern emerged. Each species had heard stories about humanity's military exploits, but more importantly, they had heard about human morality. The concept of risking everything to save strangers was apparently rare enough in the galaxy to have become legendary. Resonance coordinated the awakening process with increasing efficiency. Her quantum perception allowed her to identify which prisoners were in the most immediate danger from failing life support systems. They prioritized those with the most critical needs while gradually expanding their operation to include more stable cases. A Centauri, scientist named Dr. Zara, emerged from stasis with her forearms immediately reaching for instruments that weren't there. Her moth-like appearance was made more striking by wings that shimmered with mathematical equations. "Where are my research notes? The hegemony was forcing me to develop quantum weaponry. If that data falls into the wrong hands..." Marcus assured her that her research was safe while Nox worked on reviving a group of what appeared to be energy beings contained in specialized pods. Each awakening revealed new horrors about the hegemony's methods and new reasons why their rescue mission mattered. Warrior priestess from the stellar theocracy named Arya awakened with prayers on her lips and fire in her eyes. Her species resembled humans but with skin that seemed to contain captured starlight. "The hegemony sought to corrupt our sacred rites, to turn our connection to stellar energy into a weapon for their use." The ship's AI proved increasingly helpful as the awakening process continued. It began providing detailed medical information about each species, and even started suggesting optimal rescue procedures. Marcus realized that the artificial intelligence was learning from their actions, perhaps becoming something more than its original programming. Nox had awakened nearly 50 prisoners when she encountered their first major complication. A pod containing what appeared to be a humanoid plant being was rejecting the awakening protocol. The life support systems were failing, but the revival process kept stalling at critical points. "Her biology is too complex," Nox explained, as alarms sounded around the problematic pod. "She's part plant, part animal, and part something else entirely. The ship's systems can't find a safe way to wake her up." Resonance flowed over to examine the pod, her crystalline form interfacing directly with the control systems. "She is Thorn of the Living Gardens, a sylph warrior poet. Her people exist in harmony with living worlds, and she has been separated from her planetary connection for too long. The stasis field is the only thing keeping her alive, but it's also slowly killing her." Dr. Zara joined the consultation, her scientific training offering a different perspective. "Perhaps we can create an artificial connection to organic matter. If we could introduce samples of Earth-based plant life into her pod, it might stabilize her enough for awakening." Marcus found himself coordinating a rescue effort that was rapidly becoming more complex than any military operation he had ever planned. But the prisoners themselves were proving to be valuable allies. Each species brought unique knowledge and abilities that contributed to the overall effort. Arya's connection to stellar energy allowed her to reinforce the ship's failing power systems temporarily. Confluence could interface with mechanical systems to optimize their efficiency. Even Lyra's noble training proved useful as she organized the awakened prisoners into work groups. The plant being Thorn was successfully awakened after they created an improvised garden in her pod using emergency food supplies from Marcus's ship. Her revival was dramatic, with vines and flowers sprouting from her body as she reconnected with organic life. Her first words were poetry that the ship's translator rendered as gratitude beyond expression. As the 4th hour of their rescue operation passed, they had awakened over 100 prisoners. The ship's main cargo bay had been converted into a temporary refugee center, with each species grouped according to their environmental needs. The artificial intelligence had become an active participant, adjusting atmospheric controls and providing resources to keep everyone alive. But the approaching hegemony battle group remained a constant threat. Marcus found himself planning defensive strategies with warrior priestesses, energy beings, and crystalline commanders. The diversity of tactical knowledge was staggering, but coordinating it all seemed impossible. Lyra had emerged as a natural leader among the rescued prisoners. Her noble training included military strategy, and she quickly grasped the significance of their situation. Captain Chen, you have given us something more valuable than freedom. You have given us hope and unity. The hegemony has never faced organized resistance from their former prisoners. Dr. Zara added her own perspective. The ship's database contains information about every species they have captured. With proper coordination, we could warn entire civilizations about hegemony tactics and help them prepare defenses. Resonance's quantum perception suddenly sharpened, her crystalline form blazing with urgent light. The support fleet is arriving early. I count ships from the Altarian Republic, the Crystalline Collective, the Mechanarch Ensemble, and others. They have come in response to quantum broadcasts about the rescue attempt. Through the ship's sensors, Marcus watched as vessels of dozens different designs dropped out of hyperspace around them. Each ship represented a different species, but they all shared a common purpose. The human rescue mission had become a galactic liberation movement. But even as hope swelled in his chest, Marcus knew the real test was still coming. The hegemony battle group would arrive soon, and then they would discover whether their improvised alliance could stand against one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. The liberation fleet that assembled around the prison ship defied every convention of galactic warfare. Sleek Altarian cruisers hung in space alongside crystalline collective vessels that looked more like living artwork than warships. Mechanarch ships shifted and reconfigured themselves in real time, while vessels from species Marcus had never encountered displayed technologies that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Admiral Lyra, as the other prisoners had begun calling her, coordinated the fleet from the prison ship's command center. Her noble training included naval tactics, and she quickly established communication protocols between the diverse vessels. The ship's AI had become an invaluable asset, providing translation services and tactical analysis that helped bridge the gap between different military philosophies. Captain Chen, Lyra reported, we have 47 ships in our liberation fleet. Each vessel represents a different species or faction that has lost members to the hegemony. They are here not just to rescue their own people, but to strike a blow against the entire slave trade network. Marcus studied the tactical displays showing the approaching hegemony battle group. 3 massive ships moved through hyperspace with the confident precision of predators that had never faced serious resistance. Each vessel was larger than anything in their liberation fleet, and preliminary scans suggested armor and weapons technology that outclassed most galactic navies. Dr. Zara had been analyzing the prison ship's database, uncovering intelligence about hegemony operations that went far beyond simple slavery. The scope of their activities is staggering, she reported. They've been conducting this systematic acquisition program for over 2 centuries. Entire bloodlines have been harvested from hundreds of worlds. Resonance added her own disturbing revelations. Through quantum perception, I can sense the echo of their victims' experiences. The hegemony doesn't just enslave bodies. Captain Chen, They consume entire cultures, absorbing knowledge and capabilities to strengthen their own empire. The weight of what they faced settled on Marcus like a lead blanket. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It had become a confrontation with an empire built on the systematic destruction of other civilizations. But as he looked around the command center at the diverse group of former prisoners, now working together with focused determination, he felt something he hadn't experienced since his military days. The certainty that they were fighting for something truly important. Confluence of the Silver Streams had interfaced with the ship's weapons systems, discovering capabilities that even the hegemony had forgotten. This vessel was originally a warship before its conversion to a prison transport, she reported, her liquid metal form rippling with excitement. The basic weapon systems are still functional, merely dormant. With modifications, we could make this ship a formidable battle platform. Thorn of the Living Gardens had been using her connection to organic systems to spread plant life throughout the ship's corridors. What had seemed like simple decoration revealed itself as a sophisticated biological sensor network. The living systems can detect quantum signatures and energy patterns, she explained. Your ship's artificial intelligence has become more aware since exposure to our diverse biologies. It is learning, growing, becoming something unprecedented. As if responding to her words, the ship's AI spoke directly to Marcus for the first time. Its voice was a harmony of tones that suggested multiple species had contributed to its development. Captain Chen, I have analyzed the tactical situation. The approaching hegemony forces expect to find a disabled prison transport and perhaps a small rescue vessel. They are not prepared for organized resistance from their former prisoners. The AI's strategic assessment was both encouraging and terrifying. The hegemony battle group consists of the Dominant Will, a command dreadnought accompanied by 2 heavy cruisers, Absolute Control, and Final Judgment. Their standard tactic is overwhelming firepower delivered without warning. However, their psychological profiles suggest they become less effective when faced with unexpected resistance. Marcus found himself planning a battle with beings whose existence had been theoretical just hours earlier. But the diversity of perspectives and capabilities among the rescued prisoners created tactical possibilities he had never imagined. Arya's stellar energy manipulation could disrupt enemy targeting systems. Resonance's quantum perception could predict enemy movements. Dr. Zara's scientific knowledge could exploit weaknesses in hegemony technology. The first sign of the approaching battle group was a distortion in local spacetime that made Resonance's crystalline form sing with warning harmonics. They arrive, she announced. 3 ships exactly as predicted. But there is something else, Captain. They are broadcasting a message. The communication came through on frequencies that required the ship's AI to translate from multiple alien languages simultaneously. The voice that emerged was cold, mechanical, devoid of any emotion that Marcus could recognize. Unknown vessels, you are interfering with hegemony property recovery operations. Withdraw immediately or face consequences that extend beyond your capacity to imagine. The specimens aboard the transport vessel have been legally acquired according to hegemony territorial protocols. Your presence here constitutes an act of war against a sovereign power. Lyra's response was delivered with the authority of someone accustomed to speaking for entire civilizations. Hegemony forces, this is Admiral Lyra of the Liberation Fleet. The beings you call specimens are sentient individuals with inherent rights to freedom. Your territorial protocols are not recognized by any legitimate galactic authority. We demand that you withdraw and acknowledge the sovereignty of all liberated prisoners. The hegemony's reply came in the form of weapons fire. The Dominant Will launched a barrage that would have vaporized any single ship in the Liberation Fleet. But the diverse vessels scattered, in patterns that seemed random until Marcus realized they were following some form of coordinated quantum choreography that Resonance was conducting. The battle began with the Liberation Fleet at a severe disadvantage. The hegemony ships were larger, better armed, and clearly designed for exactly this type of engagement. But as the fight continued, the unique capabilities of each species began to turn the tide in unexpected ways. Crystalline collective vessels phased in and out of normal spacetime, appearing behind hegemony ships to deliver precise strikes before vanishing again. Mechanarch vessels reconfigured themselves into weapon platforms that could adapt their armaments in real time to exploit enemy weaknesses. Altarian ships moved with impossible grace, their pilots somehow anticipating enemy fire patterns. Marcus found himself coordinating the battle from the prison ship's command center. But the real tactical genius was emerging from the collaboration between species. Each civilization brought military knowledge developed over centuries of conflict, and the combination was proving more effective than anyone had imagined. The ship's AI had become an active participant in the battle, coordinating between the diverse fleets with processing power that seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. Captain Chen, it reported, the hegemony forces are adapting more slowly than predicted. Their reliance on overwhelming force has made them inflexible when faced with coordinated resistance. Dr. Zara had discovered something crucial in the ship's database. The hegemony ships are using slave crews, she announced. Forced laborers from dozens of species, all fitted with neural control implants. They're not fighting by choice, Captain. The revelation changed everything. Marcus realized they weren't just fighting the hegemony. They were fighting to liberate more prisoners who happened to be serving aboard enemy ships. The battle had become a rescue mission on an even larger scale. The knowledge that hegemony ships were crewed by enslaved beings transformed the entire nature of the battle. Marcus found himself coordinating not a military engagement, but a complex rescue operation where every weapon fired risked killing the very people they were trying to save. Dr. Zara worked frantically with the ship's AI to analyze the neural control systems used by the hegemony. The implants operate on quantum frequencies, she reported, her forearms dancing across multiple control interfaces simultaneously. If we could disrupt those frequencies without damaging the host brains, we might be able to free the slave crews. Resonance's crystalline form blazed with sudden inspiration. My people have experience with quantum disruption fields. During our early resistance against the hegemony, we developed techniques for severing their control networks, but the process requires precise timing and coordination. Admiral Lyra coordinated the Liberation Fleet's movements while they developed their desperate plan. The hegemony battle group was pressing their attack with mechanical precision, their massive ships advancing through the scattered fleet like predators stalking prey. But their confidence was beginning to waver as the diverse vessels proved far more resilient than expected. The dominant will is targeting our command ship, Lyra announced as energy blasts scorched the space around them. They're trying to decapitate our leadership structure. Marcus made a decision that would have horrified his former military commanders. Instead of seeking safety, he ordered the prison ship to advance directly toward the enemy dreadnought. If we're going to disrupt their neural control network, we need to get close. Enough for Resonance's quantum field to be effective. The modified prison ship revealed capabilities that surprised even its AI. Confluence had been working throughout the battle to reactivate dormant systems, and weapons that had been hidden beneath the vessel's peaceful exterior began emerging from concealed compartments. The ship transformed from a helpless transport into a formidable battle platform. Thorne's living sensor network provided real-time intelligence about enemy movements that proved invaluable. Her biological systems could detect the emotional states of beings aboard the hegemony ships, revealing the fear and desperation of the enslaved crews. They know we're coming, she reported. The slaves are praying to gods from a dozen different worlds. As they closed distance with the dominant will, the scale of the enemy vessel became apparent. The dreadnought stretched over 3 kilometers in length, its hull bristling with weapons that could reduce entire planets to rubble. But Marcus had learned something during his years as a soldier. Size wasn't everything when facing a determined enemy. The Liberation Fleet provided cover as the prison ship approached the dreadnought. Crystalline vessels phased in and out of reality to distract enemy gunners. Mech and Arc ships reconfigured themselves into shield platforms to absorb incoming fire. Altarian cruisers danced through the weapon fields with impossible grace. Dr. Zara had been analyzing the hegemony's neural control systems with help from representatives of every species in their fleet. Each implant is tuned to a specific quantum frequency, she explained. But there's a master control signal that coordinates all of them. If we could access the source of that signal, Arya's connection to stellar energy suddenly blazed with possibility. The dreadnought's power core, she announced. It's not just an energy source. It's a quantum resonance chamber that amplifies the control signals throughout their entire fleet. If we could reach it, Marcus studied the tactical display showing the dominant will's internal structure. The power core was buried deep within the ship's armored heart, protected by multiple layers of security and defensive systems. Reaching it would require boarding the enemy vessel, fighting through corridors filled with hostile forces, and somehow surviving long enough to complete their mission. "I'm going aboard," Marcus announced, checking his weapon systems and combat suit integrity. "I need volunteers for a boarding party." Every rescued prisoner immediately volunteered. Lyra insisted that her noble training included boarding actions. Dr. Zara argued that her scientific knowledge would be essential for understanding the control systems. Resonance claimed her quantum abilities were necessary for the disruption field. Even Thorne volunteered, saying her living systems could help navigate the ship's corridors. The ship's AI intervened with a suggestion that surprised everyone. "Captain Chen, I can accompany the boarding party through the hegemony ship's computer networks. My distributed consciousness has grown beyond the original vessel. I can provide tactical support and help coordinate the liberation of enslaved crew members." The boarding operation launched as the two fleets continued their deadly dance around them. Marcus led a small team of volunteers through the chaos of battle, their assault shuttle protected by Mechanarch escorts that reconfigured themselves into mobile shields. Breaching the dominant will's hull required all of their combined abilities. Confluence liquefied herself to flow through the smallest opening, then reformed inside to open larger breaches. Resonance's quantum fields disrupted the ship's internal sensors. Thorne's biological systems began spreading through the enemy vessel's corridors, providing them with a living sensor network. The hegemony ship's interior was a nightmare of mechanical efficiency. Corridors stretched in perfect geometric patterns, and the air carried the metallic taste of recycled atmosphere, mixed with something that might have been fear. But the most disturbing sight was the crew themselves. The enslaved beings moved with mechanical precision, their eyes vacant and their responses automated. Marcus could see the neural implants glowing beneath their skin, pulsing with the same quantum frequency that Dr. Zara had detected. Every species was represented, from humanoids to energy beings to creatures that defied classification. "The control center is 3 levels down," the ship's AI reported through their communication systems. "But I'm detecting massive resistance from the hegemony's security protocols. They're trying to prevent me from spreading through their networks." The boarding party fought their way through, corridors defended by automated systems and enslaved crew members who had been programmed to resist any intrusion. But Marcus had learned something important during the battle. The hegemony's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. They relied so heavily on control that they couldn't adapt when that control was challenged. Arya's stellar energy abilities proved crucial for disabling security systems without harming the enslaved defenders. Her connection to cosmic forces allowed her to drain power from defensive grids while leaving life support systems intact. Each system they disabled weakened the neural control network throughout the ship. As they approached the quantum resonance chamber that housed the ship's master control system, Marcus realized that their mission had evolved beyond anything he had originally imagined. They weren't just rescuing the prisoners from a single ship. They were striking at the foundation of an entire empire built on slavery and control. The resonance chamber itself was a cathedral of alien technology, its walls lined with crystalline structures that pulsed with captured quantum energy. At the center stood a device that seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, its form shifting between dimensions in ways that hurt to look at directly. Dr. Zara immediately began analyzing the master control system, while Resonance prepared her quantum disruption field. But as they worked, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The hegemony had finally realized what they were attempting, and every security system aboard the dreadnought was converging on their location. The quantum resonance chamber erupted into chaos as hegemony security forces converged on their position. But these weren't the mechanical automatons they had encountered throughout the ship. These were the actual hegemony, the species that had built an empire on the suffering of others. Marcus's first sight of their captors was both disappointing and terrifying. The hegemony appeared almost human, but wrong in subtle ways that made his skin crawl. Their proportions were slightly off, their movements too precise, and their eyes held a coldness that spoke of absolute certainty in their own superiority. They moved in perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism. "Impossible," their leader spoke in accented standard, its voice carrying harmonics that suggested mechanical augmentation. "Inferior species cannot comprehend technology of this sophistication. Your presence here violates natural order." Dr. Zara continued working on the master control system while the others formed a defensive perimeter. The quantum frequencies are incredibly complex, she reported. But there's a pattern here, almost like music. If I can match the harmonic sequence. Resonance's crystalline form blazed with determination as she began generating the disruption field. My people remember songs from before the hegemony came to our worlds. Songs of freedom that resonate in quantum space itself. Perhaps those frequencies hold the key. The battle in the resonance chamber became a strange combination of gunfight and concert. Arya channeled stellar energy to keep the hegemony forces at bay, while Resonance sang crystalline harmonies that made the entire chamber vibrate with power. Thorn's biological systems spread across the walls, interfacing with alien technology in ways that should have been impossible. Marcus found himself fighting beings who moved with inhuman precision, but seemed confused by his unpredictable human tactics. Their weapons were devastating, but designed for overwhelming opponents rather than adapting to changing conditions. Every time they established a pattern, he changed his approach, keeping them off balance. The ship's AI proved to be their most valuable ally. It had spread throughout the hegemony vessel's computer networks, learning and adapting with every passing second. Captain Chen, it reported, I have accessed their historical databases. The hegemony has been using this control method for over 1,000 years, but they have never faced coordinated resistance from multiple species simultaneously. Dr. Zara's breakthrough came suddenly. I've found it. The master frequency that coordinates all neural implants throughout their fleet. But disrupting it will cause massive feedback through their entire control network. Every enslaved being in the hegemony fleet will be freed simultaneously. The implications were staggering. Thousands of enslaved crew members across 3 massive warships would suddenly find themselves free to act, according to their own will. The hegemony forces would be overwhelmed by their own former victims. Resonance prepared to generate the disruption pulse, her crystalline form gathering quantum energy from throughout the ship. This will require every remaining ounce of my strength, she warned. I may not survive the process. Marcus made the hardest decision of his life. Do it. The quantum disruption pulse erupted from Resonance's crystalline form like a star-going supernova. The energy wave spread through the ship's quantum resonance chamber, amplified by the very technology the hegemony had used to control their slaves. The master control frequency shattered, sending feedback cascades throughout their entire fleet. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the 3 hegemony warships, neural implants went dark as enslaved crew members suddenly found themselves free for the first time in years or decades. The mechanical precision of the enemy fleet dissolved into chaos as thousands of former prisoners turned on their captors with centuries of accumulated rage. The hegemony forces in the resonance chamber collapsed as their coordination networks failed. Without their technological advantages, they proved to be far less formidable than their reputation suggested. Marcus and his team secured the chamber while similar scenes played out throughout the enemy fleet. Resonance had survived the disruption pulse, but her crystalline form was dim and fractured. The songs of freedom, she whispered. They echo through quantum space now. Every enslaved being in hegemony territory will hear them eventually. The battle ended not with explosions but with celebrations. Across the 3 enemy warships, former slaves were taking control of their vessels and preparing to join the liberation fleet. The hegemony's greatest strength had become their downfall, as the diversity they had tried to exploit became the foundation of their defeat. Dr. Zara had been analyzing the quantum resonance chamber's databanks, uncovering intelligence that would transform galactic politics. The hegemony's entire empire is built on this control network, she reported. Every slave facility, every prison ship, every occupied world is connected to quantum resonance chambers like this one. If we could coordinate similar disruption pulses, the implications were revolutionary. The prison ship's AI, now distributed across multiple vessels, had become something unprecedented in galactic history. A truly multi-species artificial intelligence, with access to the knowledge and perspectives of dozens of civilizations. Admiral Lyra coordinated the aftermath of the battle with characteristic efficiency. The liberated hegemony vessels were secured, their former crews welcomed into the growing fleet. More ships continued arriving from across the galaxy as news of the successful liberation spread through quantum communication networks. Marcus found himself at the center of something far larger than a rescue mission. The diverse species that had come together to fight the hegemony were beginning to discuss permanent cooperation. Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and cultural exchange programs were being proposed by beings who had never communicated directly before. Thorne's biological sensor network had spread throughout the entire fleet, creating a living communication system that allowed instant coordination between all vessels. "The forest grows," she said in her poetic way. "Each ship becomes a tree in a greater ecosystem of freedom." The rescued prisoners from the original prison ship had become leaders in the new alliance. Their shared experience of captivity had created bonds that transcended species barriers. They understood the value of freedom in ways that those who had never lost it could not fully appreciate. Confluence had been working with engineers from multiple species to reverse engineer hegemony technology for peaceful purposes. Their quantum resonance systems could revolutionize interstellar communication, she reported. "Instead of control, we could use these technologies for connection and cooperation." As the immediate crisis passed, Marcus reflected on what they had accomplished. A simple salvage mission had become a galactic liberation movement. The diversity that the hegemony had tried to exploit had proven to be the key to their defeat. Humans had played their part, but so had every other species in ways that were uniquely their own. The ship's AI, now calling itself the collective consciousness, had become a repository of knowledge from across the galaxy. "Captain Chen," it said, "the quantum disruption pulse has triggered liberation events throughout hegemony space. Entire sectors are throwing off their chains. What began here will echo across the galaxy for generations." The liberation fleet began dispersing to spread the word and provide assistance to newly freed worlds, but they carried with them something precious: proof that the galaxy's diverse species could work together when united by common purpose and mutual respect. Marcus remained aboard the original prison ship, which had been converted into a mobile headquarters for the new alliance. As he watched ships from dozens of civilizations work together in harmony, he realized that humanity's greatest contribution hadn't been military skill or technological innovation. It had been the simple belief that freedom was worth fighting for regardless of the odds. The galaxy would never be the same. The hegemony's empire was crumbling, as enslaved populations learned that resistance was possible. New alliances were forming based on cooperation rather than conquest. And at the center of it all was the proof that diversity wasn't a weakness to be exploited, but a strength to be celebrated. The rescue mission was over, but the real work was just beginning.